Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She didn't see me walk in, but he did. He looked right at me. Not surprised, not nervous, just calm, like he expected me, like he'd already won. There was music playing, something soft and expensive sounding, but I couldn't hear a thing over the blood rushing in my ears. The waiter had just passed by with a tray of oysters. People were laughing at their tables. A birthday candle was flickering in the corner. But to me, the entire room had frozen. My wife was leaning forward, lips parted mid-sentence. Her hand curled casually around a wine glass she would never drink from again. I didn't come here to make a scene. I came here because of a receipt I found in the dryer. 2 champagne flutes, 1 dessert, 1 hotel room, 1 name I didn't recognize. I hadn't confronted her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed the moment to hurt just enough so I'd never doubt myself again. And there it was, right in front of me. She was wearing the earrings I gave her for our 5th anniversary. The one she once told me made her feel too formal for casual nights out. But tonight, for him, formality wasn't a problem. I walked straight up to their table. Her back was to me, but she knew. She must have felt the energy shift, the drop in air pressure, the silence that followed me like a storm. She turned her head slowly, her face drained, eyes wide, mouth barely moving. But still, she didn't speak. Neither did I. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the small velvet box she gave back to me during our first big fight, the one I had kept for years out of foolish sentiment. Inside it now was my wedding ring. I placed it gently on the table. Not tossed, not thrown. Just set it there between their 2 untouched forks. And then I looked at her. Really looked. Hoping, for a split second, to see something: guilt, fear, love, anything. But all I saw was nothing. The man across from her picked up his napkin like I was just a passing waiter who had forgotten the wine. So I turned around and walked out. I wish that's where it ended. But the real betrayal? It was still waiting for me. At home. The moment I stepped back into the house, I felt like a ghost walking through a life that no longer belonged to me. Her shoes were still by the door, lined up neatly like they hadn't just betrayed everything we built. The faint scent of her perfume still clung to the air, something floral and cold. I don't know why, but I walked straight into the kitchen like I expected her to be there, like she'd somehow rushed home and was preparing some explanation. But the room was empty, silent. Only the dishwasher hummed softly like it didn't know the world had cracked in half. I took off my coat and dropped it on the floor. My hands were shaking, not out of rage. I wasn't that kind of man. But from this weird numbness crawling up my spine. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Call someone? Yell? Cry? I ended up just standing there, staring at the countertop, until my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it might be her. Maybe a text. An apology. A lie. But it wasn't. It was my brother, Ellis. We hadn't spoken in months. Not out of anger, just distance. He lived 3 states over. Had his own problems. His message was short. You okay? Just saw something. That was all. My heart sank. He must have been there. At the restaurant. Where someone he knew was. Maybe word was already spreading. Maybe this was how it begins. Not the heartbreak, but the humiliation. The whispers. The pity looks. I didn't reply. I sat down at the dining table. The same table where she and I had once written our vows together on the backs of napkins and spilled wine laughing about how cheesy we were. I rested my head in my hands and just existed there. For minutes. Maybe hours. I don't know. Then the house phone rang. We barely use it. I forgot it even worked. But it rang. And instinctively, I picked it up. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The voice on the other end belonged to her. She must have pocket-dialed it by mistake. And she was laughing. But not with me. With him. I heard her say something I can't forget, no matter how badly I want to. He just left the ring and walked out. I didn't think he had it in him. Then he laughed too. Said something about finally being free. That's when I hung up. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I just sat there. Now I wasn't shaking. I was still. For the first time in years, I was completely still. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I just sat on the edge of the couch, in the dark, with the phone still in my hand. The call replayed in my head on a loop like some kind of emotional torture reel. Her voice, his laugh, the words. I didn't think he had it in him. I guess I didn't either. The sunrise didn't bring clarity. It just made the silence louder. At some point, I forced myself into the kitchen to make coffee like some pathetic attempt at normalcy would undo everything. I stood there waiting for the machine to drip, staring at the floor, when my foot bumped into the cabinet drawer that always stuck. The one she said was useless. The one she told me never to bother fixing. For some reason, I pulled it, and it slid open, like it had never been jammed at all. Inside was a red folder. Not red like a school folder or something you'd buy at an office supply store. Red like it was meant to be seen, meant to signal danger. I don't know why I opened it. I just did. Inside were papers, receipts, hotel bookings, but they weren't new. Some were from over a year ago. Different cities, different names. Her handwriting scribbled on the back of one. Room 217. Ask for Aaron. I froze. Aaron. That wasn't the name of the guy from last night. I didn't know who that was. But now there was another. My stomach twisted. I kept flipping. Emails printed out. She'd saved them. Who saves their affair emails? Her tone in them. It was light. Flirty. She wrote things like, I feel more alive with you than I ever have. And, he doesn't even notice when I leave anymore. She was talking about me. I stumbled back and nearly knocked over a chair. I clutched the counter and just stared at the floor again, like I expected it to open up and swallow me whole. And then, like salt in the wound, her voice rang out from the hallway. You're home early. No apology. No panic. Just calm. Controlled. Like nothing had happened. I turned toward her. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I held up the folder. She looked at it, then at me and said with a shrug, So now you know. Just like that. No breakdown. No begging. No tears. She said it like I'd asked what was for dinner and she didn't feel like cooking. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't her shame. It was my humiliation. I didn't say a word. Not when she walked past me. Not when she poured herself coffee. Not even when she asked, So what now? Like we were discussing dinner plans. I just stood there with the red folder in my hands, my heart hollowing out like someone had scooped it with a ladle. Everything about her was calm. Too calm. She wasn't worried. She wasn't shaken. She was done, and she had been for a long time. I walked out of the kitchen and into the bedroom, almost on autopilot. I needed to pack. I didn't know where I'd go, but I couldn't sleep in the same walls where she whispered love to other men. I opened the closet and pulled my old duffel bag down. As I tossed in shirts and socks, something caught my eye in the corner. A small black suitcase. One I hadn't seen before. It had a combination lock. Who buys a suitcase with a lock for weekend business trips? I tried her birthday. No luck. Then mine. Still nothing. And then, I tried the anniversary date. Clicked open. Inside was a mess of things that didn't belong together. A silk scarf. Foreign currency, euros, maybe? A burner phone. And a second passport. Her photo. A different last name. I dropped it. My throat dried instantly. My ears were ringing again. I didn't understand. Couldn't. What was she planning? Was she leaving? Running? That's when I heard the front door click. She'd left. I ran down the hallway, suitcase still open on the bed, papers scattered on the floor. I looked out the window. Her car was gone. I picked up the burner phone with trembling hands. Only one number was saved. No name. Just A. I called it. No answer. I called again. Voicemail. A man's voice. Calm. Smooth. He didn't say his name. Just, you know what to do. I dropped the phone like it burned. I didn't know what I was looking at anymore. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something else. Bigger. Deeper. Like she had a whole second life buried just beneath the surface of our quiet suburban routine. Then I noticed the envelope taped beneath the suitcase lid. I pulled it off, hands shaking, heart pounding. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. Her handwriting. Everett, I knew you'd find this eventually. There are things I can't explain, not now. Don't follow me. It's better that way. I never meant to hurt you, but I also never planned to stay. I read it 3 times, each word heavier than the last. Not meant to hurt me? She'd shattered everything. And now she was gone. Just like that. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, holding the note like it could somehow rewrite itself. I never meant to hurt you, but I also never planned to stay. That line wouldn't stop spinning in my head. How long had she been preparing this? Weeks? Months? Years? And who the hell was A? The way she'd written the letter. So final, so clean. It read like someone who'd already rehearsed her exit a dozen times. The suitcase sat there, wide open, like a wound in the room. That burner phone was still on the floor. I didn't want to touch it again, but something kept pulling me toward it. I needed answers. Not just for closure, that word never helped me, but to understand what kind of life I'd been living in without knowing. I powered it back on. There were no apps, no photos, no contacts except for A. But in the call history, there were dozens of outgoing calls, and one incoming from a number labeled James, do not answer. That alone made my blood run cold. I stared at it for a long time. Why would she label someone that way and still answer? I dialed it. The phone rang once, then twice. Then someone picked up. There was silence on the line. No greeting, no background noise, just breathing. Hello, I said, my voice cracking. Another pause. Then finally a man spoke. I told her you'd find it too soon. My stomach turned. Who is this? I asked, but I already hated that I sounded small. Weak. I couldn't even fake strength anymore. You don't know me, he said. But I know who you are, Everett. And I know what she left out. I froze. What do you mean? Who are you to her? A long breath, then a chilling response. I was supposed to be her exit, not his, not the guy from the restaurant. Me. She lied to both of us. I didn't speak. My grip tightened on the phone. She said you were clueless, that you wouldn't notice. But I told her, a man doesn't miss everything. I felt dizzy. So why are you telling me this? He let out a laugh, hollow and sharp. Because she's gone. And now we're both holding empty bags. I lost money. You lost a marriage. Maybe we compare notes. Then he hung up. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Who was this guy? And how many others were there? Suddenly, everything felt like a setup. Every moment of our marriage, the random business trips, the sudden love of solitude, the expensive clothes we couldn't afford, they all had fingerprints I'd ignored. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was a fool with a front row seat to his own demolition. The next morning wasn't a morning at all. It was a blur. I don't even remember falling asleep. I only remember the cold sting of sunlight hitting my eyes and the silence in the house pressing down on me like a weighted blanket. Her side of the bed was untouched, as if she'd evaporated from our life and left only her perfume behind. For some reason, I walked to the foyer and picked up her keychain from the dish near the door. I didn't know why. Habit, maybe, or stupidity. That's when I saw it. A little brass key I'd never noticed before. It had a tag on it, faded and scratched. But beneath the grime, I could make out 3 words. Balin Self-Storage. Unit 14C. I stood there, staring at it like it was a detonator. What could she possibly be keeping in a storage unit? I shouldn't have gone. Any sane person would have left it alone. But I wasn't sane. Not anymore. I was unraveling and I wanted the thread to lead somewhere, anywhere. Even if it cut my hands on the way down. Took me an hour to drive to the place. I nearly turned around twice. When I got there, the woman behind the counter barely looked up. She just handed me a clipboard and pointed me down a row of identical steel doors. My palms were sweating so badly I almost dropped the key. Unit 14C wasn't locked with a padlock. It slid open easily, like it was waiting for me. Inside was a single wooden chest. No dust, no mess, just that one piece of furniture like it had been placed there with care. I knelt down and opened it. Inside were photos, hundreds of them, some of us old ones, from vacations I thought she'd forgotten. from moments I remember as real. But mixed between them were dozens of her with other men, laughing, kissing, holding hands in places I'd never been to. Receipts were stacked neatly next to the pictures. Airline stubs, hotel invoices, car rentals, different names, different destinations. And tucked between them all was a leather-bound journal. Her handwriting again. Sharp, slanted, deliberate. I opened to the first page. Documenting the double life. For closure. For control. For when I disappear. Couldn't breathe. I flipped further. Dates. Descriptions. Names. Timelines. The entries weren't emotional, they were clinical. Like case notes. Some entries ended with things like, success, no suspicion. Others had stars and question marks. She had ranked the people in her life. I was listed as, Everett stable, safe, dim. Dim. That word didn't just break me. It buried me. And still, there were pages left to read. I don't remember leaving the storage unit. I know I did because I somehow ended up in my car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. The journal sat on the passenger seat like a loaded weapon. I didn't want to open it again, but of course I did. I told myself I was just looking for a name, a location, a reason. But the truth is I couldn't stop. I flipped past the pages with my name on them, past the color-coded timelines and the cold assessments of the men she'd collected like souvenirs, past an entry about the man from the restaurant. She called him convenient, short-term, shallow pockets. That stung more than I care to admit. But what stopped me was a photo tucked near the back of the journal. Polaroid. Old, worn, and curling at the edges. It showed her, younger, maybe college age, standing next to a woman I'd never seen before. They were smiling, arms around each other. But it wasn't the pose that froze me. It was the message scribbled in blue ink on the bottom. Everything started with Madison. If it ends with her. I stared at the name. Madison. Not a lover. Not a fling. A woman. A beginning. I didn't know who she was. But in that second, I knew I had to find her. The journal didn't list a last name, but it did mention Thornhill Retreat, 2009, Cabin 6, 4 nights, Madison plus me. I didn't recognize it, but a quick search pulled up a rundown wellness lodge 2 hours north. The kind of place couples go to fix themselves or fall apart trying. I drove without thinking. Every mile felt like I was shedding parts of myself. When I got there, the cabins looked abandoned. Weathered wood, cracked paint, wind chimes barely clinging to rusted nails. But a car was parked out front. An old hatchback, sun-bleached and dented. I walked up to the main office, knocked. A woman answered. Older now, but the face in the Polaroid was unmistakable. She didn't look surprised to see me. You're Everett, she said softly. She said you'd come, eventually. I blinked. You knew about me? Her eyes didn't move. I knew everything. Madison invited me in without a word. Her cabin smelled like cedar and old books, the kind of scent that feels heavy with memory. She poured tea like it was something she did every day for ghosts. I sat across from her, still clutching the photo like proof of something I didn't fully understand. She wasn't always like this, Madison began, staring into her cup. We met at that retreat because we were both running from things. She from her family, me from a marriage I barely escaped. We made a pact that we'd never let anyone own us again. No man, no life, nothing. I didn't interrupt. She took it too far, Madison continued. You were supposed to be her peace, her anchor, but she got addicted to the running, the secrecy. At some point, the game became her identity. She wrote that if it ends with you, I said. Why? Madison smiled, but it was sad. Because I was the only person who ever told her no, and the only one who saw her before she became a myth to herself. Then she handed me a small envelope. She left this with me years ago, said if you ever came looking, you deserved a choice. Inside was a check, a large one, life-changing, honestly, enough to pay off my debt, start over, maybe finally build something mine. And a letter, no apologies, no explanations, Just this: I don't deserve to be remembered kindly, but I hope you find a way to live kindly anyway. It was the first honest thing she'd said in years. I left the cabin that day lighter than I arrived. Not healed, but no longer hollow. I moved across the state 2 months later. Took a job that didn't involve tracking anything but my own peace. I still keep the journal locked away, not as a wound, but as a reminder of how far I've come. And sometimes, late at night, I think about the version of her I'll never fully understand. But I no longer chase the answers. I just live. That's enough. Comment below. What moment in history changed your outlook on love or trust forever? Thank you for joining me on this journey. You've been watching Reddit Confessions.